The live stream has started. And again, I would like to welcome everyone to today's meeting. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and proceed to the assembly area in the car park. Please note that the Council is webcasting this meeting live on the internet and making an official recording. The recording forms part of the public record of the meeting and will be available on the Council's website. Can members please ensure mobile phones are turned off and that background noise is kept to a minimum? To help everyone hear clearly, members are asked to remain seated and to speak clearly. Throughout this meeting, the Vice Chairperson will keep a list of members intending to speak during the debates. The Vice Chairperson will call the next speaker during debates and will announce your microphone number on the desk before you. When you are called to speak, please raise your microphone number to be announced. This will ensure your microphone will be turned on. I should also remind everyone that filming, photography and recording of this meeting is permitted, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If there are any members of the public who do not wish to be filmed or photographed, and you have not already informed a member of staff, please raise your hand now so that any such photographer or cameraman may be aware. Contributions to the meeting will be timed in accordance with the time limits for debates. When your time is up, I will ask you to finish the sentence you are on and stop speaking. I do not believe we have any remote members here today. Thank you. We will continue with arrangements for the leaders' report that were introduced at the January meeting. I will seek to group questions from members under the topic headings contained in the report. During questioning under the leaders' report, I will go through each of the topic headings and ask members to indicate if they wish to ask a question. I remind members that it is one question per member under this item. So I just have to... And now, I would like to express deep concern regarding the situation in Ukraine. And I beg your indulgence as I wish to make a statement. I couldn't let this opportunity pass to add my words to those of many others regarding the desperate situation in Ukraine. As you all know, Ukraine has been invaded by Russian forces in an appalling, ruthless, and vicious manner. The Ukrainians have put up a remarkable, effective, and determined resistance, which has, in many places, stopped the Russian invaders in their tracks and given them a very bloody nose, much to the Russians' surprise. Ukraine needs all the help that the West can give them in equipment, medicine, food, and basic supplies, and moral support. We must do everything in our power to help the Ukrainians, both in Ukraine and to give all aid possible to Ukrainian refugees. I know that Herefordshire is a generous county and always has been, and I know that large numbers of our people are already making up food and care packs and donating funds, a very good start. I'm sure that when Ukrainian refugees arrive in Herefordshire, we will greet them with open arms and welcome them into the Herefordshire family. I trust that Herefordshire Council will do its utmost to assist in this great endeavour in every way possible. As I have said, Herefordshire is a generous county. Let us demonstrate our welcome and hospitality to the full. Ribbons have been made for the members today, and collections for the Red Cross will be taken today as well, if you are feeling so generous and kind, and I trust you will be. as I said, Herefordshire is a generous county. Let us do our best for our suffering people in Ukraine. Thank you. Item 1, apologies for absence. To receive apologies for absence, and I've received apologies from Councillor Crockett, Davis, Hardwick, Graham Jones, and I don't believe there are any more. Are there any more?
Can I add Councillor Paul Andrews from this morning, unexpected personal circumstances? Thank you.
Councillor Paul Andrews added to that list. Thank you, Councillor Harrington. Item 2, declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest in respect of Schedule 1, Schedule 2, or other interests from members in respect of items on the agenda. So, declarations of interest by members in respect of items on this agenda. Members who have declared an interest and withdrawn from the meeting will be readmitted once the item has been concluded. Do any members have any interest to declare? Councillor Phillips, your usual interest, I presume?
Yes, Vice Chairman of the Rural Services Network, which is applicable to the debate on rural proofing.
Thank you. No other interest to declare? Item 3, minutes. To approve and assign the minutes of the budget meeting of Council held on the 11th of February. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Members, are you in agreement with the minutes of the meetings held on the 11th of February? Could you indicate, please? Thank you. Item 4, Chairman and Chief Executive's announcements. Please find attached the Chairman and Chief Executive's announcements from page 19 of the agenda. And you'll see I've been reasonably busy in the short time between the last meeting, including the Herefordshire Country Food Trust launch, where they are endeavouring to use all the spare game, both pheasants and deer, etc., which otherwise might go to waste, but in fact, by the use of the Herefordshire Country Food Trust, are converted into extremely nutritious and tasty, very well easily able to be stored packs, and are given out in food banks and similar places. It is a very worthwhile operation. And I was also at the Royal British Legion County Conference, which does a great job for our servicemen and ex-servicemen and our veterans. And now, I've been handed a petition by the Herefordshire Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Association, and I wish to hand this to Councillor Ange Tyler, please. Thank you very much. And I ask that you assess and read this very carefully and produce a written response as soon as possible.
Can I just say a few words, please? Thank you. I will take this petition away, Chair. I would like to say to the Hackney Carriage Association that we are going through the process from the results of the consultation. It's not an easy process. It's going to take some time. I'm looking to bring the policy back to full council in May. But we do have a James Button who is looking through all the responses to comply our policy for it to be fit for purpose. And I am listening to all the concerns being raised by the taxi trays, and I'm personally writing back to everyone that I can do. I am this is a very serious matter for Herefordshire, and I do not like the fact that we have got less taxi drivers at the moment because of the situation and what's happened through COVID. But I will do my utmost to make sure this policy is fit for purpose and everybody will be safe when they get in their cars going from A to B. And that's the ultimate aim of this policy, is everybody is fit, is everybody is safe to go from A to B. And that's the whole idea of this policy, to make sure our public is safe. Thank you, and I will take this away, Chair, and I will respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm sure we'll all look forward to the outcome of your deliberations. Chief Executive, do you have any announcements you wish to make?
Nothing further from me today, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 5, questions from members of the public, and there have been no questions submitted under this item. Item 6, questions from members of the Council, and also there have been no questions submitted under this item. Then we come to item 7, 22-23 Council Tax Setting Report, pages 23 to 42, to set the council tax and precepts for 2022-2023. Please find the report from page 23 in the agenda pack and the supplement with additional recommendation C as published yesterday. The Cabinet Member Finance, Corporate Services and Planning will move and introduce the report, and you have 5 minutes for that.
Thank you, Chair. At our meeting on 11th of February, we approved a net budget requirement for the council tax year 2022-23, standing at 175.9 million, and an associated council tax requirement of 119.5 million on a council tax base of 70,252.52 Band D equivalent dwellings. As the billing authority, it's now our responsibility to approve the council tax amounts for each category of dwelling in Herefordshire, including the precepts for the West Mercia Police, the Hereford and Worcester Fire Authority, and the Herefordshire Town and Parish Councils. A month ago, when we debated this, we approved a council tax increase of 1.99% for general services, plus a further 1% ring-fenced for adult social care, and that was and the council's Band D council tax becomes set for £1,701.70 for the year. The parish precepts for 22-23 are attached to the report here at Appendix 1, and they total slightly over 5 million, amounting to an average Band D council tax charge across our parishes of £73.14. This represents an average increase of 2.4% across our parishes, and the charge for each property band, inclusive of the council tax charge, is set out in Appendix 2 to the report. The precepts for the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner for West Mercia, requiring an increase of 3.94%, and the Hereford and Worcester Fire Authority, requesting an increase of 1.96%, are also shown in Appendices 3 and 4. And Appendix 5 provides an overall position giving the impact for all precepts on council tax bills by detailing the total amount of council tax payable in each parish by property band. The council tax levied to enable council to resource service delivery in accordance with corporate plan priorities which were established by full council. The proposed increase could result in increasing individuals' financial difficulties. This is mitigated by providing payment options, relevant discounts and reliefs, including council tax reduction scheme and a local assistance fund as agreed at the last meeting. The council also provides 100% council tax discount for our young people leaving care and for our foster carer families. These council tax increases and parish precepts have been debated across our parishes and by our own council, and hopefully the information that's provided in this report sets out clearly the overall position. I recommend the report to council here today, and following debate, I look forward to the approval of the precept for the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The report now needs to be seconded, and I believe the leader will second the report. Leader, do you wish to speak now or after the debate?
After the debate, Chairman.
Thank you. We now move to the debate. Members are entitled to speak once during the debate for 3 minutes. Cabinet members responding to specific questions will have a 2-minute time limit. The Vice Chairperson will be keeping a list of members who wish to speak during the debate. Please can members indicate to the Vice Chairperson if they intend to speak, and you have 3 minutes each. Do we have any speakers? No speakers that I can see? Oh, you do have speakers now. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm delighted for the first time ever. I've not had to say what I always say annually at this for the last 20-odd years. This is not a debate. This is merely a technical matter for noting, almost, the debate was last at the budget, and that was decided. All we're doing is adding what we decided, or some of us didn't approve of, but that's history. We're just adding what the other bodies are levying, and that is their business. So it's not really a debate. It's really for passing and noting.
Thank you, Councillor. Point noted.
Councillor Matthews, number 1.
Councillor Matthews?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Only a very brief comment. You're quite right. We've agreed the precept at the last meeting. No problem with that. But I do note the increase in the West Mercia Police of 3.94, and as Councillor Harvey said, 1.96 of the Fire Authority. All this is doing is putting more pressure on hard-pressed, hard-working people who are going through very difficult times. So it's absolutely imperative that we become more efficient and provide value for money on every issue that we enter into, because the burden on the public is becoming totally unacceptable.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kenyon.
Next speaker, Councillor Lester,
Oh,
number
my
23.
apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I take Councillor James's point about a matter of process, but and this is perhaps not the time to be debating on this issue, but I would like to say that I'm not in a position to support these proposals put before us. We had a good debate last time, but the Conservatives made it clear that there were monies available that the council had been given from government, and also monies available that were in reserves, and so this 2.99% increase that was gone through the budget was not necessary when the monies could come from elsewhere. And so at a time when families and households are going to have to really meet severe challenges when it comes to fuel bills, and when it comes to energy bills and the cost of living, now is not the time to be putting 2.99% on the council tax, and therefore I will not be supporting this. So thank you for that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Kenyon,
Councillor Kenyon.
number 3.
Thank you. You got me? It's almost my time is up. I think I made this comment a few years ago. Just want to make it again. The banding, how it works is the difference between A and B with the increases and that sort of stuff. If you look at the difference between A and B with all things added up, it's £233. And if you look at D and E, it's £466. I believe all tax should be fair, and I don't believe the banding system creates it fair when it goes up by percentage. I don't think it's fair. Why should people that live in perhaps a larger house with a bigger banding haven't necessarily got a large income coming in? So I think tax should be fair, and I feel this should potentially be looked at. Liz, I don't know if you can throw any light on it as to why it is, or it just is because it is. But I'd like to see it looked at, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more speakers?
Councillor Ginman, number 13.
Councillor Ginman?
Thank you, Chairman. I note the Hereford and Worcester Fire and Rescue Authority and respect that they have come up with 1.96. Can I put a marker down, however, as concern, given their costs will be rising markedly during this year, the importance of the retained fire service in this county is immense. And I would be concerned if there was any on effect of the inflation that they are going to see and we're going to see with regard to that retained service. It is so important, and I note their figure is below that of the police and, of course, of our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker, Councillor Phillips, number 18.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes, as Vice Chairman of the Fire Authority, can I just give the Councillor Genman the reassurance that obviously we are subject to government restrictions and cannot put the council tax up more than 2%. So that's why it's 1.96. You should also know that we are very much committed to retain firefighters, and in actual fact we have a significant amount of investment of up to £1 million in the medium-term financial plan to actually deliver that service. So please, if you have any queries or questions, come along to me, but we were restricted to what we can increase to 2%, which is indeed the same as the council. However, the council has the opportunity to put the 1% social care charge up. We don't have that.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any more speakers? In which case, Leader, will you have your say now, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. To be quite brief, this increase is regrettable but necessary. The Council has voted in favour of the increase, and we should be supporting it at this meeting. No one is going to find the next 12 months easy. Communities, our staff, with the situation in Ukraine, things are going to be worse than we even thought they were going to be. And I think now is the time for the Council to show it can be increasingly efficient in what it does and doing everything it can to help rather than having its costs cut. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. If there are no further speakers, Monitoring Officer, please can you advise if any amendments have been received? No amendments. And we now move to the vote. And I introduce the Monitoring Officer to conduct a recorded vote.
The Chair's vote.
No. I thought I was right. Monitoring Officer?
Thank you. I shall call out the names of all members present and request that they clearly state whether they are for or against or abstaining from voting. Councillor Graham Andrews. For. Councillor Polly Andrews. Abstain. Councillor Bartlett. For. Councillor Bartram. For. Councillor Balderson. Abstain. Councillor Bolter. For. Councillor Bowen.
Abstain.
Councillor Bowes. For. Councillor Chowns. For. Councillor Durkin.
Against.
Councillor Fagan. For. Councillor Foxton. For. Councillor Gandy. Abstain. Councillor Guthrie.
Abstain.
Councillor Harrington.
For.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Hewitt.
For.
Councillor Hay. Councillor Hitchener.
For.
Councillor Howells. Councillor Ianson. Councillor James. Councillor Ginman.
For.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Mike Jones.
For.
Councillor Kenyon. Councillor Lester.
Against.
Councillor Marsh.
For.
Councillor Matthews. Councillor Milmore.
Against.
Councillor Milne.
For.
Councillor Norman.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Price. Councillor Probert. Councillor Roan.
Against.
Councillor Shaw.
Against.
Councillor Stark. Councillor Stone.
Abstain.
Councillor Summers.
For.
Councillor Swinglehurst.
Abstain.
Councillor Simons.
For.
Councillor Tillett.
Abstain.
Councillor Toynbee. Councillor Tyler. Councillor Watson. Councillor Wilding.
For.
Well, can the monitoring officer please consult and then come back and give us the results? Results of that vote: for 20, against 8, abstained.
28.
28. Sorry, it's a very. I think the pen slipped there slightly. 28 for, against 8, abstain 11, and I declare that the report is approved. Thank you. Item 8, Rethinking Governance, pages 43 to 330. To approve the suggested amendments to the Council's Constitution recommended by Audit and Governance Committee. And please find the report from page 43 in the agenda pack. The Vice Chairperson of the Audit and Governance Committee and the Chairperson of the Rethinking Governance Working Group, as the proposer, will move and introduce the report. 5 minutes. So, speech by the proposer, please.
This report is before you today as a result of a notice of motion which was passed in October 2019 to review our governance arrangements, together with the agreement at full council in October 2020 to follow a hybrid cabinet model of governance. The review was undertaken using 5 guiding principles as outlined in paragraph 3 of the report. The issues, questions and resulting changes recommended, either operationally or to the Constitution, have been linked to each of these cornerstones, which are to maximise member engagement and participation in decision-making, to ensure decision-making is informed, transparent and efficient as possible, to welcome public engagement, to enable members and officers to perform effectively in clearly defined functions and roles, and to assess any resource implications. I would like to thank the core members of the working group for their contribution to this process: Councillor Watson, Bartlett, James, Matthews and Selden, and recently Councillor Harvey. I would also like to highlight the efforts and support of Officers Claire Ward, Kate Charlton, John Coleman and Caroline Marshall, together with the other members of the legal team. With only 2 weeks left, Claire, you will be missed. Reading a clean version of the Constitution is not an easy task, so I commend those members who have successfully tackled the 287 pages of light reading attached to this agenda item. Appendix 1 summarises the changes, none of which should be a surprise. The working group actively sought to engage all members, either via focus group meetings, all-member briefings, one-to-one meetings, online surveys, and email communications. Other key stakeholders engaged in the project have included Cabinet, members from all committees, planning officers and council staff, including Paul Walker and the management board. The working group also referenced information from at least 16 other comparative councils and sought guidance and best practice information from the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. The key recommended changes include the alignment of scrutiny committees to corporate objectives which are supported by a dedicated statutory scrutiny officer. Specifically, a new scrutiny management board will consider cross-cutting matters, including the budget, together with having the responsibility for the strategic direction and oversight of the scrutiny function and work programme. The General Scrutiny Committee will be renamed, and a new Environment and Sustainability Scrutiny Committee will provide greater focus on environmental commitments since the Council's declaration of a climate and ecological emergency. And the Adult Scrutiny Committee will be renamed to Healthcare and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee and will have a broader remit to better adapt to upcoming changes in the health environment. An annual point of reflection has been introduced for committees to review their performance, including elements such as the effectiveness of their work programming, meetings, communication and training, and implementation and impact of recommendations. By reporting this review annually to full council, this will enable the public and members to hold each committee to account. The public participation section has been amended and streamlined to be more transparent, easier to use, and potentially less resource intensive. Cabinet have also been provided the ability to hold Q&A meetings with the public. The planning functions and procedures have been combined into one section, and time limits for board member representation during committee have been introduced. And lastly, the employment panel functions relating to disciplinary and grievance meetings have been set out. It has been recommended that these changes come into effect after our annual meeting to allow time to implement the operational changes required. These will improve elements such as understanding of member and officer experience and capacity and developmental requirements, forward plan and key decision consultation, communication in relation to scrutiny matters, scrutiny executive protocol, work programming and scheduling of meetings, improved strategic partner engagement, more effective use of task and finish and standing panel activity, and communication training and associated guidance in relation to the planning code and guide with more user-friendly and accessible explanations. Improving our governance arrangements is not a static exercise, and there are a number of areas that still need to be considered, some of which are outlined in paragraph 12 of the report. These actions will be tracked by the Audit and Governance Committee and reported to full council in turn. In addition, there will be a review of the agreed changes 1 year after implementation to take into account lessons learnt and to help ensure the continued achievement of the guiding principles. I ask that you vote in favour of the proposed recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor. The report now needs to be seconded. Councillor Shaw, as chairperson of the Audit and Governance Committee, and you will second the report, I believe. Do you wish to speak now or after the debate?
After the debate, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And we now move to the debate. Members are entitled to speak once during the debate for 3 minutes. The Vice Chairperson will be keeping a list of members who wish to speak during the debate. Please can members indicate to the Vice Chairperson if they intend to speak. And remember, you have only 3 minutes. They're showing. I believe it was Councillor Stark who was first.
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Stark, number 6.
Councillor Stark, off you go.
Thank you, Chair. I will support these proposals, but I still have concerns about the operation of scrutiny within this council. While these will change the structure of the committees, we really do need scrutiny to be treated seriously in this council. I have sat on General Scrutiny Committee for about 2 years now, and we have had agendas almost destroyed by papers being cancelled at the last minute that were meant to be presented to us. And I do feel that these proposals will only work if everyone within the council engages on scrutiny, not just the members themselves, but officers as well, so that we can make it work. So while I do support this, I do think, and I do ask both the leader and the chief executive to make sure that we actually make scrutiny an important function of this council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker is number 12, Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you.
Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to pay tribute to those members who've worked on this. So they've put in a tremendous amount of effort and done a fantastic job. So well done to Christy and all those members. I've got just a couple of little detailed things. One is planning in principle, which seems to fall without the current redirection processes, which is causing a degree of frustration. So I'd just like some reassurance that that will at some point, be taken account of, and there will be a mechanism available to ward members to redirect planning in principle applications. I would also like just some reassurance around the use of the chair, the discretion of the chair in timing of ward members' presentation to planning committee. Overall, I'm quite satisfied that the time limits are correct. However, sometimes it's complicated and it may take longer. So as long as there is some element of discretion around that, I think that would be really helpful. And my only other slight concern is whether or not we're confident that we have sufficient resources, both in terms of member time and officer time, to give to the enhanced scrutiny that's proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think so. No other speakers?
Yes, Chairman.
Oh, yes, did you want? Sorry, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Councillor Bolton, do you want to reply to that?
Yes, please, Chair.
Sorry.
In the points that Councillor Swinglehurst have raised, I would like to confirm that planning in principle is on the outstanding list, so it is something that we will be addressing throughout the process. I do believe that there is Chairman's discretion within the planning section to allow members to speak for longer, and it will require them to liaise with the Chairman prior to the meeting on those very specific applications and the resources capacity. It is something that has been raised by a number of members, and in the all members session that we raised previously, we did give an outline of the number of meetings, and I think with scrutiny committees currently having 7 meetings a year, this change in structure would only result in potentially 5 committee meetings. But one of the things that we'd be looking at, which has been also raised earlier, is trying to make scrutiny more effective with more efficient and effective work programming, which also includes meeting scheduling, and for the chairs to really determine whether 7 meetings are the right number of meetings, or whether potentially scrutiny can be formed with less meetings throughout the year through better work programming, better training for members, better training for officers. So it is something that is coming up through all the efficiency and effectiveness recommendations that hopefully we'll be able to implement before May.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker, Councillor Matthews, number 1.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like members to support me in asking for it to be minuted for the excellent work done by Councillor Balston. I've worked with a lot of chairmen over the years, and she comes second to none. She's put in many, many hours of work sorting this very complicated issue out, and also for the support of the office. So I'd like it minuted that for the excellent job that she's done. And also, I would like, please, to just ask the monitoring officer to clarify one issue. It says that 2.6 on page 62, the council appoints a statutory scrutiny officer. I asked for that to be done, and with statutory responsibilities to promote the role of council scrutiny committees within the council and support the work of scrutiny committees by providing help and advice to scrutiny members. And then it goes on to say, and also to those being scrutinised. Could I ask the monitoring officer to say that whoever will be doing that will be acting as prosecution and defence, and to think that that job can be done satisfactorily by one person?
Thank you, Councillor.
I can clarify that. That is to make sure that officers presenting papers are as prepared as members. So I don't see a conflict in that role. That's making sure what's been already said in this room is that scrutiny is effective, and that requires both sides of the table to be able to be prepared to deal with the matter in hand.
Good.
Next speaker is Councillor Phillips, number 18.
Councillor Tillett. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I would add my congratulations to Councillor Balderson for what she did, and also for the patience that she had in those individual calls with me that she had, where I expressed some degree of frustration that, of course, that this council, of course, was one of the first councils to adopt the scrutiny procedures back in 1999. And, of course, the tension between the executive and scrutiny is absolutely crucial to the democracy of local government, and that was what was set up when that was done. It is a matter of regret that what we established then, and in the 12 years that we had then, has not been replicated now. And let's be blunt about it, that is a choice that this council has. In my day, we had 5 scrutiny committees, and the chairs and vice chairs of those committees then formed the Strategic Monitoring Committee. And you had a clear example of holding the executive to account. You adequately resourced the scrutiny side, something that has not been done. And that is the key to it. If you do not adequately resource it, you do not have proper scrutiny, and you never will. And who is in charge of the resourcing? That is the hands of the executive as well. It is regrettable that here we are nearly 3 years into this administration, and there will be cabinet members who have not come before scrutiny to actually be challenged and deliver their portfolio of action of work. In our day, it was always recognised that they had to attend and they had to present reports and answer questions on those reports. That, to me, is open democracy, and that is something that we should have learned, and it's a pity we ever got rid of it, and it's a pity we're not getting it back. So I share some of the comments that have been made already about the resourcing, and until you adequately resource it, and if there are vacancies, then you fill it. You can actually move officers around, and they can, it's part of their development work in working for scrutiny and policy development. And also critical is member development. Members must be able, at the end of their 4-year administration, to recognise how well they've advanced in their knowledge and their skills. And I'm not sure that we can openly say that.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Councillor Simons, number 7.
Councillor Simons.
Yes, thank you. Again, echoing other comments, wrong mic. Yeah, an excellent piece of work. I couldn't see, and it may have been hidden somewhere in the depths of the report, I couldn't see any reference to enabling members of the public to attend meetings in a hybrid fashion through Zoom. I appreciate that we as councillors are currently constrained for reasons known only to the government that we have to physically attend, but there didn't seem to be any reference to enabling members of the public to be able to attend meetings via Zoom, which I think would be helpful and healthy in terms of promoting, if you like, the informal scrutiny process of resident participation. I wonder if somebody could advise or comment on that.
The monitoring officer will give you a reply.
You're quite right, it doesn't refer to it. It would be a good idea to put that in the public participation section. I think I could do that under the delegation under recommendation B. And the reason I say that is because that's an operating model that we use at the moment. So therefore it's just to ensure we're consistent with what we're doing. I don't think it needs to be part of the Constitution because it's how we operate rather than the rules in that sense. But I'm happy to include that under my recommendation B.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monitoring Officer.
Next speaker, Councillor James, number 4.
Councillor James.
Yeah, can I endorse what Councillor Phillips said about we should have looked at some of the examples of earlier days. I mean, I take responsibility for introducing the cabinet system on the council some 20-something years ago, and Councillor Phillips was also involved in that at the time. I do think, we need to have, as he said, a more inquisitorial type of scrutiny, holding cabinet members and the leadership to account. That hasn't existed, and I'm afraid it's not going to exist under this structure, sadly. I also note that, you know, it's taken 3 years to arrive where we are when this council is coming to an end, which is unfortunate. I can predict that there's a very strong chance that the next council will do something different. And so it seems to be that we're, it's an accusation I make of the council, we seem to be process-driven rather than outcomes-driven. And that's a very sad day. I also note that the administration, the plank of their campaign last time was to abolish the cabinet system and introduce a committee system. It's interesting that, having found themselves in administration, they suddenly abandoned that manifesto commitment. I'm not necessarily in favour myself. Majority of my group are in favour of a committee system, but you know, it seems ironic that this has happened, that it's been abandoned immediately one takes office.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bolson, do you wish to reply to that? Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. Off you go.
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to a number of those comments, improving governance arrangements is not static, as I mentioned earlier, and we will have a full review 1 year on, where we will take into account lessons learnt and try to continuously improve the situation that we're in. So everyone's comments today will be taken on board, and I think working with the chairs of scrutiny to ensure with better work programming and better agendas and making things more effective, and the introduction of our effectiveness evaluation reports at the end of each year to determine whether the recommendations have been implemented and have made a valuable difference to the people on the street, and reporting that to full council, I think, will make a big difference and allow us to continuously improve and get to where we need to be.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker is Councillor Harvey, number 26.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't let Councillor James' comments go unchallenged. Honestly, this is just another example of listening to a load of old nonsense from Councillor James. If you paid attention and actually participated... What is the point of order? What's the point of order?
Can we please stop there, please? Can you stop? Can we have the point of order that you wish to bring forward?
Absolutely, Chairman. That is not respectful behaviour in this chamber. We are bound by the Nolan principles, and I just do not think that saying that somebody's opinions are a load of nonsense is respectful to that member's views and their position.
Well, in that case,
Thank you.
In that case, I withdraw what I said, but what I will point out is that Councillor James is entirely incorrect in what he has said. If he had been paying attention to the process and participating on behalf of his group, as perhaps he should have done, he would be fully aware that this has been introduced as an audit and governance report. This has been entirely owned by the Audit and Governance Committee. This is not the decision of the administration. Indeed, were it up to the administration, we would have been doing what we had intended to do, which was to move to a committee-based system. It is actually a decision of this council of 18 months ago which rejected that as a way forward and proposed instead this hybrid system, which has then taken a really long time to get to where we are now. Now, you know, members of the public might well have expected us to have either had a scrutiny system or a committee-based system without cabinet, But what they've got is kind of something in between. I agree with Councillor Phillips's remarks. Scrutiny needs to be strong, and it's disappointing that during the previous Conservative administration, the resources to support scrutiny in terms of the officer backup was diminished, and the ability to run the number of task and finish groups that had been the habit of scrutiny was again diminished. I would hope and expect that scrutiny is strong under whatever process is put forward for it, and that the scrutiny members take a full and active part in the process. If any scrutiny committee wishes to bring a cabinet member before it, all it has to do is sort its work programme out so that that is what happens. Cabinet members attend scrutiny when there are reports in their area of responsibility. However, it's very rarely that the committee, unless the cabinet member actually signals to say something, that the committee ever actually puts questions directly to the cabinet member who's given them the courtesy of attending. So actually the way that the committee meetings are run and the way that the committees operate is going to be really important to get improved, and I'm glad to see that there's going to be some training on that. You know, I mean, it's, for me, I'm disappointed that we're moving from 3 moderately well-functioning committees to 5 committees. I only hope there's an improvement in the overall competence, capability, rigour and strength with which scrutiny is undertaken in this council, because scrutiny is really important as our safety net to call us to account and to make sure that we have the best outcomes for the people of Herefordshire. Weak scrutiny is not in the best interests of this administration or of Herefordshire. And if we're going to approve this today, it's going to require every member of this council to work a lot harder and be more involved in the scrutiny process, and hopefully in task and finish groups that come forward. So I hope everybody's behind doing that.
Thank you, Councillor.
Because that's going to be a lot more work for all of you.
Thank you. Councillor James, a personal explanation must relate to some material part of an earlier speech by yourself, which you feel may have been misunderstood or misquoted. Can you explain, please, how you feel you have been misunderstood or misquoted? And you have 2 minutes.
I made the point that the administration have changed their mind on this particular issue. Councillor Harvey stated not. And then she went on to say that the cabinet system, the committee system, was rejected by council, the full council, on which the administration had a majority. So it is the administration that have rejected the committee system, not the other members of the council as a whole. So bear that in mind. Don't try to get out of it, because it was the central plank of the administration's campaign for the election. I disagreed with them, personally, about that at election time, but that is the true position then and now.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker is Councillor Gandhi, number 25.
Councillor Gandhi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As someone who's quite old, I've operated under both committee system and under cabinet system. Ultimately, decisions are the same. A group of people who are in control of the council make the final decision. Whether it's done through committee, whether it's done through scrutiny, ultimately the decision-making process ends with the cabinet or the Finance and General Purposes Committee, or whatever you want to call it, and that makes no difference. The only difference really is the fact that the committee system takes a lot longer to get to the decision-making process. So there are good things and bad things in both systems, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the decisions are made in the same way. With regards to scrutiny, scrutiny is only as good as the membership on the scrutiny committee. And the difficulty that we have, and the difficulty we may continue to have with more committees, is actually getting people to serve on scrutiny who want to be on that scrutiny committee, who have a real interest in that subject, who want to participate, who will read the papers, who will ask probing questions. If we don't have that, then this will not be any better or any worse than we've got now. And that is the most important thing. And for me, that really is down to the leaders of the political groups to identify members within their groups and what those interests are amongst those members, and ensure that those members are put on the correct committee. For too long, we are in a situation, because it has to be proportionate, that we stick people on to make the numbers up. We can't do that if we want effective scrutiny. We have to put members on there who really have an interest in the subject. And if that means that some members are on more than one scrutiny committee because they have an interest, I accept that's more work, but that's a better form of scrutiny than sticking somebody on who doesn't really want to be there. So I think it's all of us, as has been said, we all need to recognise that in order for scrutiny to work, we've all got to play a part. None of us can any longer literally take our allowances and just turn up for full council. And that, unfortunately, is the case for some members. And we can't do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
The next speaker is Councillor Howells.
Before you do that, just Councillor Bowleston might like to reply.
Sorry. Councillor Bowleston.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree with everything that Councillor Gandy has indicated, and I think a real key in this model is a dedicated statutory scrutiny officer to support all the scrutiny committees, and more and better training for both officers and members, and also understanding members' experience and their capacity, which is one of the things that is coming up in one of our operational recommendations, to really, so everybody can understand what members' backgrounds are and where they could best add value to the scrutiny process.
Thank you, Councillor. Now we have...
Next speaker is Councillor Howells, number 5.
Councillor Howells.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Chairman of currently of the Children and Young Persons Scrutiny Committee, first of all, I share in all the commendations of the excellent and hard work done by Councillor Bowleston and her team. Really excellent, and I hope it will help improve the work that we do in governance. However, I have to support comments made, for example, my colleague, Councillor Stark, and others on the inadequacies of how scrutiny currently works. As part of the improvement plan, we're working with the Local Government Association to develop greater effectiveness, and as part of that we conducted an assessment of how we felt scrutiny was working. It was written by myself and the Vice Chair, Councillor Hewitt, fully endorsed by members of the committee before we delivered it. And frankly, the assessment was it's actually hardly fit for purpose. We have shared that assessment with senior members, officers as well as the LGA, who all agree that we've much to do to improve scrutiny performance. So we are undergoing a programme of training and development, but in reflecting some of the points already made, we have a long way to go to ensure that scrutiny really is functioning as effectively as it should be. I do, of course, support the report and I'll be voting to accept it, but I do want members to understand, for those not on scrutiny especially, how vital it is that we work together to give scrutiny the bite it should have, and it currently isn't delivering on that at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And do we have another one?
We have 6 more speakers.
6 more speakers, and I will call it to a halt after that.
So it's Councillor Watson, number 8.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up a point about Terry James in saying that it's not the coalition's decision to actually change their mind. I think that he might have short-term memory, because in May 2019, 26 new councillors came into the council. So therefore, there was a survey that was carried out by elected members. All elected members were asked to complete the survey, and those survey results are the evidence that has been the decision for the hybrid model. And I think that is what members need to remember. It is not a coalition decision to make such a decision on a hybrid model. It is for all those who participated in the survey. And I have to say that I'm so disappointed in my colleague, because as a former member of the Rethinking Governance group, and Councillor James being a member of that group, not always attending, but I just think that point has to be made. We have used evidence at all of the decisions that we make on the changes for the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have
Councillor Wilding.
Councillor Wilding.
Number 13.
Thank you, Chair. This administration is an independent and a Green Party coalition, and I'm proud that we listened to every member of the council and amended some of the aims that we may have had when we were elected. Independents do not always get whipped. They do not have to follow someone else's lead. So the people of Herefordshire should not be led into believing that this is a weakness. This is a strength. We have listened, amended some of our aims, and I believe we've come to a good solution. I also am very pleased that one of the new scrutiny committees will focus on the environment and ecology. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Lester, number 23.
Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Chairman. I would also like to thank Councillor Balderson and all the colleagues who participated in this reshaping governance. Not an easy task, and there are many ways of organising how we could do our business, and I welcome the thought that the matter will be kept under review. But before everyone thinks that the last 3 years has not been effective, I would just like to say that I think that there has been some very good scrutiny, but some very good scrutiny under difficult challenges. And I know that this council has had resourcing issues with staff, and it's had a COVID crisis to deal with regard to having online meetings, and meetings were cancelled for a variety of reasons. But the one general point that I would make, and it has been made by councillors who've come before me in this debate, is that it is very difficult to scrutinise the workings of the council when very detailed information is presented to you almost at the last minute, or that information is not available when you're about to start a scrutiny meeting. And when members are faced with those challenges, it is almost tying one's hand behind one's back to try and be effective in scrutiny when not all of the information that is necessary is forthcoming. And I only have to point to recent examples of where detailed financial information about the budget was not provided until the 11th hour. So these are really challenging situations that scrutiny committees have had to face, and I speak from experience, but I know that the adult scrutiny and the children's scrutiny meetings have had real challenges with information that was either not available or not made available. So the plea I would have is that whilst we all look to making this next structure work, if there is not the thinking time and the information put forward, then scrutiny becomes a very challenging role, no matter what structure you've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker is Councillor Bowes, number 19.
Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree with Councillor Gandy, Stark and the majority of what Councillor Lester said. Officers and members need to take it seriously and need to ensure that they've got an interest in the scrutiny committee, that they have training and experience. And I would also like to agree the fact that reports are often withdrawn at the last minute or aren't properly prepared, and I think we need to make sure that officers realise that there is a timetable and that they need to work towards that timetable so that we can all make sure that scrutiny is effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No?
Next speaker is Councillor Durkin. No? Okay.
So you said there was only 6. You've now got Councillor Hitchin who wants to speak and Councillor Kenyon. So if he doesn't want to speak, he might have to.
Yes. Councillor Hitchener, leader.
Thank you, Chair. I very much aware that there's a proposal for regular forward plan and coordination meetings. So that I think will involve myself, probably the Chief Executive, the chairs of all the scrutiny committees. There's not very much reference to that committee in this report. And I just wonder whether there's a particular reason for that, because I think that group will be critical towards making scrutiny a success. That committee then also will probably work with the Scrutiny Management Board, and I think with those those two oversight committees, I'm optimistic that we will actually improve scrutiny, and issues such as the one raised by Councillor Lester will be raised at the appropriate level, making sure that we as administration and the senior officer are working together to achieve good scrutiny. I commend various things that Councillor Gandy has said in her usual manner. I think she was faced with a committee with no one on it who had any experience whatsoever of the area she was looking at, a particularly important area for us as a council. People are not elected on the basis of particular skills. They are elected locally by the electorate, and it's a real challenge trying to get people to be interested in such extraordinarily difficult roles. As we move through an administration, we start becoming more engaged in these things, but initially, with half the councillors being new, we really didn't know an awful lot of how to deal with things, and a credit to Carol Grandy for getting a committee together and encouraging that work. I think we need to make sure that after the next election that members are trained in an appropriate manner and brought to scrutiny and be really useful contributors to each of those scrutiny committees. There's a proposal that now I think 71% of people, members, should be involved in some way. I look forward to that increase of more people being involved, and I do hope it becomes a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We now have Councillor Harrington, and then Kenyon, Ianson and Hewitt, and that is the final speaker. Thank you. Well,
Thank you, Chairman, and I want to start by recognising the very hard work that Councillor Balderson has done, thorough work. It has taken time, and also to thank everyone who has engaged in this process. I remain a supporter of a committee system, but I accept that that is not the majority decision of this council. I would just ask a couple of specific questions. One thing that strikes me as being very important, and I don't think it's something we can necessarily legislate for within our own guidance or our own protocol, is whether we can make it compulsory, or certainly very strongly advise, that opposition members populate the vice chair and chair roles. This is not something that the previous administration did very well, if at all. They tended to have your own members as chairmans. So, well,
totally true.
Okay, that is my perception. I apologise if that's not entirely correct. Okay, okay.
Thank you.
I withdraw that. That's fair enough.
Thank you, Councillor.
The point is, I think it should be more than guidance to make sure that opposition members are in those roles. If a scrutiny committee is to work well, it should be not a friendly group to the administration. It should be technically the opposition in those roles, to make sure that there's sufficient rigour and tension. And I think that goes a long way to providing the necessary tension within that process. And the second thing was in relation to the officer who's going to be supporting the committees. Will they be able to give direction? In other words, will they be able to sort of suggest specific things to ask? Because if I'm being perfectly honest, I have been in front of, and despite, I'm not sure if it was Councillor Phillips or someone said that we don't go to committee meetings. I've been to many and been grilled quite strongly. But very often, actually, I've sat there and at the end of it thought, well, they haven't asked me the very difficult question. And the point made about giving documents in time is absolutely crucial. Members need at least a couple of weeks to really think about things and to discuss things so that when people like myself are before them, they can ask pertinent and accurate questions, and I will have to give those, responses. So those are the two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Monitoring Officer, I believe you have some words to say.
I could just answer those two questions. In relation to restricting the pool for Vice Chair and Chair appointments, that wouldn't be a matter of the Constitution, but could be discussed at the group leaders in advance of the AGM. As you know, for the AGM, what I would like to see would be all that agreed in advance as an appendix, and everyone we just vote once. I'll leave that as my parting shot. But in relation to the statutory scrutiny officer, absolutely, the whole thing about effective questioning, there will be training on that as well, but kind of the involvement of that statutory scrutiny officer to hone where the questioning should go, to be really clear on what the purpose is of actually the scrutiny item as well, is really important.
Thank you. Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of things for me, really. I didn't get to read it all, and unfortunately, it was very long. So if I've missed something, please forgive me. The proportionality is going to stay within the committees. Is that right, as I understand it? Yeah, members on that committee is proportionally, politically proportional. Well, things like the children's and adult scrutiny, I don't think it should be. It should be anyone that's got an interest in it, and anyone's got an expertise. And if there's a particular group that have got two people that are very good at this, they should have two people in there. So we really do need to look at the personalities rather than the groups. Being unaligned, I'm not very friendly, as Councillor Howes will tell you when I'm in a scrutiny meeting. I'm probably very much disliked, which is fine by me. But I do like to make my points. You're chuckling away there. So what I would like to see, after the next election, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more unaligned councillors that don't want to be part of any of this. So unaligned councillors should actually get, rather than be voted on at an annual meeting, should just be allowed to go on a committee. And it's pretty straightforward in my way of thinking. So if we can make that happen, or if it's already in there, Councillor Balderson, that's fantastic. So that's my 10 pence.
Councillor Balderson.
Thank you for those comments. I'd just like to point out that we are bound by the proportionality rules. However, one of the things that we did look into is the more effective use of task and finish and standing panel activity, which does not require proportionality. And that's where you can engage with more members and also experts from outside the council. They can be invited onto the task and finish and standing panel groups as well if necessary. So that's one thing that we will be trying to engage in more within the new structure.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ayanson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Balderson knows that I think she's a star, so that goes without saying.
Can we have your number displayed? Start again.
Okay, right. Okay, Councillor Balderson knows I think she's a star, so that goes without saying.
You just said it.
But I would like to just mention section 9, on which is the guide to roles and responsibilities of councillors. I think we can all look at that very carefully. But 594, to be a corporate parent to look after children and young people in the country. Now, this is so important, and the cabinet member responsible, she's trying very hard to make it a working thing, because we in the past we've had corporate parenting meetings cancelled time after time, And so to renew them setting up a board to sit there, this hasn't happened because, and I quote her email, unfortunately after several reminders we're still waiting for some reps. So I trust they will get in touch this week. You know, people have been asked to do this and they still haven't bothered. And if you want to look at this week's corporate parenting panel meeting, it's chaos because the children's services officers are not present, or they only stay for half the meeting. It's such an important part of our council work, and unfortunately there are a considerable amount of members who do not seem to take this responsibility seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Final speaker, Councillor Hewitt.
Number 9.
I just want to say I'm in awe of the committee that put all this together. My God, they've got brains. Well done, everybody. And will you forgive me, please, if I have missed this part of the report, but as Vice Chair of Children's, and I think Councillor Howes would agree with me, what we're hearing is a missing feedback loop. So recommendations get put forward by scrutiny, they get some consideration, but looking back on the action tracker, there isn't an accountable person, there's not a date by which that will be achieved. And then the final part of the loop, and we were encouraged to think about this by our participation officer, newly appointed, Christine Robinson, is that scrutiny should have the ability then to say to the public, as a result of the considerations which have been before us, we have been able to XYZ, or so that part of the feedback loop isn't happening. I don't know how long it's not been happening for, because I'm new, so I don't really understand if this ever happened before. But I think that's an essential part of the process. And it's really, really baggy in children's. I don't know whether other scrutiny people can talk about that and say that it's, say that, you know, they can look back and say, oh yes, that was done on this date and that was the accountable officer and we gave this feedback to the public. So this last bit about feeding back to the public is really essential, because what the children are saying is that we ask for something and it goes into a black hole. Well, you know, that's not good enough. We need to be clearer about we listened, we did. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Balderson, do you wish to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's a couple of things. I think in terms of the proposed structure that we're looking at today, you do have the Strategic Management Board, which will be providing the oversight to the scrutiny function, and that would be one of the elements that they would be looking at. But also, more importantly, we have reintroduced the annual effectiveness evaluations, which gives the committees time to pause each year and review what they have done, how they have performed, and how their actions have provided value to the community. But in terms of current activity, most of the committees should be undertaking a degree of this. For example, at Audit and Governance Committee, almost the first agenda item that we discuss is our outstanding actions and recommendations list, and that gets reviewed first thing before everyone is tired, and we've gone through hundreds of pages of an agenda item. So it is down to the chair and how things are managed.
Thank you, Councillor. I think this has been well debated now, and Councillor Shaw, as seconder, you have a chance to speak.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank members for all their heartfelt comments on what has been a huge effort by Councillor Balderson and those working on the working group. I wanted to add a high-level comment and context, perhaps. And there exists in the Constitution 2.1.13, the purpose of the Constitution. But it doesn't really answer the unasked question, why do we need a Constitution? Is it a rule book? Yes, I suppose, of a kind. And is it to be treated like the Pirates Code? More of a kind of guidance? Well, again, yes, perhaps in part. And is it simple to understand? Well, yes, in the sense that it is drafted to be logical. But as Einstein remarked, nothing is so simple that it cannot be misunderstood. And what has been apparent during this process of redesigning the governance of our council is that our constitution, our rule book, our code remains a compromise. It will satisfy all of us some of the time. It will satisfy some of us all of the time, but it is unlikely to satisfy all of us all of the time. In that strange world where a comma inserted or missing, where the difference between must and may can produce inspired debate, our thanks must go to Councillor Christy Balderson and the Working Party that have spent their time reworking our constitution to meet, as best they can, the needs of our council in future years. I'd like to thank too those members that have engaged with the consultation process during this examination. There will be those who are disappointed that their ideas and wishes are not included, but all group leaders have discussed the result, which by necessity needs to reflect the balance of an evidenced composite view. And the result before you has the unanimous support of the Audit and Governance Committee, all members. Can I thank all the officers that have accompanied our colleagues through the strange land of the Constitution, especially thanks to Claire Ward for her patience and John Coleman for his enthusiasm to get the task done. But this document is not written in stone, and indeed we know there is more work still to be done. The changes to our scrutiny mechanism must necessarily be weighed once we appreciate better how they are working. And that brings me to my last point. The system may be created perfectly, the reports may be presented perfectly, but the recommendations and decisions will rely on the input of we councillors. That remains our responsibility, and it is up to every committee member to discharge their duty conscientiously. That last point then, put more simply, it is up to the scrutiny chairs and members to make this work, to get the outcomes we want. I think we need to improve our performance. I think the Chief Executive needs to acknowledge the importance of scrutiny and the necessity of officers to give it the time it deserves. I ask you to approve the report.
Thank you, Councillor. There are no further speakers. Monitoring Officer, please can you advise if any amendments have been received?
I think no amendments before.
Thank you. Now we move to the vote on the report. I will call the vote and members are asked to clearly raise their hand to indicate if they are for, against or abstain on the recommendations. All those for? In favour? Any against? Yes. Any abstentions? Thank you. That is carried. And I now declare a 10-minute break. I think you've all earned it. Thank you very much. Designation of monitoring officer, pages 331 to 334. There is a correction and a deletion. I wish that you will delete the word interim from the recommendation, as designation to the director applies whether the post holder is interim or permanent. So just delete interim, please. So we'll say to approve the recommendation by the employment panel to designate the role of Director of Governance and Law as monitoring officer. Please find the report from page 331 in the agenda pack, and the chairperson employment panel, as the proposer, will move and introduce the report. Leader, you have 5 minutes, if you so wish.
Yes, Chair, thank you for this. This issue was discussed at the employment panel on the 15th of May. Papers were available, still available on the internet if you want to have a look to see what was discussed at the time. So this is about, we must have a monitoring officer. It's a statutory requirement, and it is the norm for the monitoring officer also to be the most senior lawyer within the council. Some inquiries were made to see if we should look and have a slightly different model, but 11 of our local authorities do have this person as the monitoring officer and the most senior lawyer. It was interesting to me as I did follow this up a little bit. There was one authority that did not have, well, actually, the number of authorities did not have the senior lawyer at the top table, which I think is wrong. I think we should have people like Claire at the top of the senior management in the council. I think it's a really important role. I am slightly biased in that respect, as you might know. The key areas that the chief lawyer looks at, obviously, is the head of the legal service. As I've said, they should be on the council management team. They manage the portfolio, including democratic services and registrars. And then finally, the role is as monitoring officer. I really don't think I need to dwell on any more. If anybody has any different arguments, I'm interested to hear them. But I'd just like to put forward and make this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The report now needs to be seconded. The Vice Chairperson Employment Panel will second the report. Councillor Chance, do you wish to speak now or after the debate?
I'll speak after the debate, because I can't find my number.
It must be around there somewhere. Thank you. Do you want in fact to speak now? After? Fine. We now move to the debate. Members are entitled to speak once during the debate for 3 minutes. And the Vice Chairperson will be keeping a list of members who wish to speak during the debate. Please can members indicate to the Vice Chairperson if they intend to speak. Do we have any speakers?
Not currently, Chairman. Oh, Councillor Harrington,
Councillor.
number 27.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate this is an improvement on the situation that we had before, in my opinion, but I still feel personally that the monitoring officer should be someone totally separate from the legal department of Herefordshire Council, but I realise that is a minority view, but I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have another speaker.
Yep. Next speaker, Councillor Watson, number 8.
Councillor Watson, all yours.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I know that we have looked at the table of salaries for Chief Executive and Directors in our last meeting, but I think it's really disappointing that monitoring officers aren't actually paid the same as a director, knowing that our quasi-judicial process and how important the legal, our constitution is to the council. It's just a statement, and I just would like it to be noted. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers? Yes, we do. Councillor Shaw.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to be one to endorse this recommendation, but I do take Councillor Harrington's comments on board. The monitoring officer, I think, has to be able to give unbiased advice to individual members, and he or she needs to be able to disassociate their role as a member of the senior management team sometimes from that advice, so that their advice to a member isn't tainted, as it were, by their necessary relationship on the senior management team. And I think that just needs to be held and understood by both the chief executive and the rest of the senior management team, that he or she needs, to some extent, a dotted line somewhere to the members where they are acting as a close confidant or a guide or mentor to a member who has an issue which might involve either the senior management team or a senior management team member. I'm not sure how we reflect that in the job description, but I think it does need to be borne in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Any more speakers?
No further speakers,
In which
Chairman?
case, monitoring officer, Councillor Chance, yes. 27?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just formally second this and refer colleagues to the arguments made by the leader in favour of the proposal.
That's fine. Thank you very much indeed. There are no further speakers now. Monitoring officer, please can you advise if any amendments have been received? No amendments? Now we can move to the vote. I will call the vote, and members are asked to clearly raise their hand to indicate if they are for, against, or abstain from the recommendation. All in favour? Any against? Abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you. And now we come to the Leader's Report, item 10. And to receive a report from the Leader on the activities of the Executive, the Cabinet, since the budget meeting of Council on the 11th of February 2022. Please find the Leader's Report from page 335. I invite the Leader to present the report and to respond to any questions arising. And remember, they are questions only. 5 minutes, Leader.
Is that for dealing with all the questions as well?
Sorry?
Is that for dealing? I thought I should just begin this by making reference to the situation in Ukraine. We are all appalled and saddened by the war. For many years, Herefordshire has relied upon workers from Eastern Europe, Ukraine included, to work here. Some have stayed and are bringing up their families. Many of us travel internationally and might have visited Ukraine. We have a strong global presence in the security industry, and there are workers from Herefordshire in Ukraine providing services. In the last few days, I've had a number of emails from local residents offering accommodation and other help, and it's enormously encouraging to have those emails. I would say that if any of the members of the public want to continue to make those sort of contributions, if they send an email direct to me, I will then pass them straight on to people in the council who can deal with it. So my email address is david.hitchener@herefordshire.gov.uk. Perhaps I'll just mention one or two other aspects, just to let people know that there is an organisation in Gloucestershire. It's called the excuse me for this. The Ukraine Women's Association for Gloucestershire and Herefordshire. Now they will take contributions. We could, of course, set up our own organisation in Herefordshire, but I think if there's an existing organisation, there's no reason to be duplicating on that. The National Disaster Emergency Committee and the United Nations Refuge Agency, UNHCR, are both involved, and there will, I'm sure, be people raising money locally, but also there is the opportunity to give money to the Disaster Emergency Committee. So our hearts go out to the people in Ukraine who cannot but be affected by the scenes we see on television, and later on, I think we have an opportunity to say more with Councillor Shaw's resolution notice of motion. So I'll move on now to my report. It's shorter than usual. The time since the last meeting was much less than usual, so the number of headings are smaller, but I open up to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Members are reminded that they may ask one question upon the whole of this report, but there will be no debate on matters contained in it. I remind members that this is an opportunity to ask a question of the Leader. Please, can members be brief when posing their question and avoid repeating points already covered? As already outlined at the start of the meeting, I will go through each of the topic headings from the Leader's report and ask for speakers under each topic. The Vice Chairperson will be keeping a list of members who wish to speak under each topic, and please can members indicate to the Vice Chairperson if they intend to speak, and you have 3 minutes each. Can any members indicate if they have any questions on the topic Core Strategy Progress Report on page 336? I can see no. No. Councillor Kenyon.
Number 3.
I haven't got a question for that specific topic. I've got about two other ones.
Councillor Kenyon, each one is in order on the report, please. We have one question on the whole report, but we have several. We have 5, in fact, 5 different topics.
Yeah, and that's not the topic I've got a question about.
Well, then
so
please wait until that topic comes up.
I put my hand up right at the beginning. I didn't put my hand up again.
Well, you need to put your hand up again when the topic comes up, please.
Chairman, that's exactly what I'll do. I'll put my hand up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Item 2, update on phosphates. This might cause some interest. Good. Lot over here, first of all, I think. Vice Chairperson.
So, Councillor Lester, number 23.
Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Chairman, and can I thank the Leader of the Council for his comments about the Ukraine and about the fact that I'm sure this Council gives its great solidarity to the people of Ukraine and this nation as well, and we'll be covering that topic, but I do welcome his comments. My question, just briefly, is at Cabinet we raised the issue about phosphates again and the financing of it, and I did ask the question, I think there was £3 million allocated, but only £2 million appeared in the performance target. So I was just concerned that that extra £1 million from the LEP has gone awry. So I would like clarification that that money is still there. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader?
I'm wondering whether we're probably waiting for a written response to that. I'm looking at Councillor to Mr. Lovegrove. I don't know whether you're able to respond to that at the moment.
No.
Mr. Lovegrove? Thank you. Who do we have next?
Next speaker is Councillor Milne, number 22.
Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Chair. Leader, I wonder if I could ask a question relating both to your report on the special options consultation for the local plan and your report on the Luston constructed wetland and phosphate update. I see any consultants using the so-called standard method for assessing the housing market area needs assessment came up with a figure of some 17,000 over the planned period to 2041. It is a stretching target based upon a projection of previous numbers plus an uplift for affordability, large in Herefordshire's case, as there is such a gap between average earnings and average house prices. The HMANA is done without consideration of land availability, which is normal, although challenging, as more and more seems to be becoming prone to flood. What is not normal is Herefordshire's deliverability crisis due to the moratorium across the Lug catchment. While I recognise the intention of the Luston wetland is to provide headroom to allow development, it comes with no guarantees or timescales. As our plan approaches its examination in public,
Councillor,
I
a
grant
question, please.
Can I ask if we would therefore seek to apply an allowance so that while we strive to meet genuine housing need, we are not trying to meet a housing target made unrealistic by circumstances beyond our control, to put us on the back foot again in planning terms while we are constrained by the moratorium and other environmental factors over which we may have little control. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Leader?
Yes, I'll ask Councillor Harvey to perhaps comment on the detail in a moment, but the top line point, you're absolutely right that here we have a restraint on housing caused by factors outside our sphere of influence. And it's having an effect on the housing supply. And there's an opportunity in the future, unfortunately, for government to make life very difficult for us and builders to make life difficult for us in the future. And that's a point which we are making to central government and raising it with them because we may well need some help. And it's not just a Herefordshire issue, it's across the country. The Chief Executive and I had a meeting with the LGA, the subcommittee that looks into this area, and there are a considerable concern around the country about the housing supply being affected by things such as the moratorium that we have. But for the detail, I'll pass, if I may, to Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Milne, for your question. What we're talking about here is the difference between the assessed need and our ability to meet that need. So as far as the core strategy evidence-based documents which do a housing market needs assessment, the standard formula has been used as part of the consultants' work in delivering that assessed need. All of the constraints that we have with regard to moratoriums on developments in river catchment areas, widening areas of land subject to flooding risk, and other issues to do with deliverability are all constraints on whether or not we are able, when it comes to it, to be able in a sustainable way to address that need. And that's a separate issue. I understand that Councillor Milne has had correspondence with officers on the detail of this, which I've been following closely and will continue to do so. But just to say that as a ward member representing one of the communities which has been subject to significant unplanned development as a consequence of this council's failure to meet the 5-year housing land supply bank, which is required of us by national planning policies. I have absolutely no intention of putting further communities in that position as a consequence of the update of the core strategy that we have now.
Can you bring yours
so
to a close,
I will
please?
be making sure that whatever it is we do have in our core strategy update, it will be deliverable, taking into account the constraints that we have facing us, even if it is a requirement to change the phasing of the delivery towards the back end of the plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have more speakers?
Yes, two more. Number 28, Councillor Toynbee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just have a question about paragraph 6, the proposed phosphate commission, and I'd just like to ask the leader if you consider calling it the Clean Rivers Commission, or a name that would give it maybe more immediacy and a feeling of engagement with people, and that would give it a broader scope, because as we know, phosphates aren't the only problem that rivers face. And I think I'm probably not the only person who took a while to understand what the Nutrients Management Board is, because that's doesn't sound like what it actually is. So I hope that we can come up with a name that, you know, says what it is, broadens its scope and really engages people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker, number 9.
Do you want
Councillor
to
Hewitt.
answer that question?
No answer, or you haven't
Yes, no,
answered?
I haven't answered it yet.
No, no, you're going to
Yeah,
say.
sorry, Leader.
Do you wish to answer?
Yes. My feeling is that we need to concentrate on this phosphate issue. If we broaden it to clean water, then it just takes in an awful lot more things. We need to be concentrating on this one particular aspect. And if we do get the Phosphate Commission up and running, then I think it needs to be a short, sharp, very concentrated and focused, and to deal with that. I don't know whether the Nutrient Management Board should be renamed something else. I don't know, but I mean the issue is sometimes communication, isn't it? We need to have common sense, straightforward things that members of the public can understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Vice Chairperson.
Next speaker is Councillor Hewitt, number 9.
Yeah,
Councillor
thank
Hewitt.
you very much. I'm delighted that we had a unanimous decision on a WPZ, and I thank the leader very much and Councillor Swinglehurst for the high-level conversations that they're having. However, when a patient comes into emergency, you don't have a high-level consultation, you do what's necessary. And from the beginning, as a planning authority, we have not been doing what's necessary. We have applied the necessity for habitat regulation assessment only to that small part of the body which we think is supposed to be failing. And if you look at the Somerset levels, Natural England has clearly stated that that necessity for HRA applies to the whole of the catchment. Now, the reason we have planning pushed into the south of the county is because we can't do it elsewhere. If we were to stop this opposition between environment and economy the whole time and treated HRA as a facilitator for sustainable development, then we wouldn't be in this awful position. And I urge the leader to have that sort of robust conversation. By the way, ammonia matters, nitrogen matters. It's a key driver in the death of water crowfoot.
Thank you. Leader.
Well, it's a very important issue, habitat risk assessments, and it does relate also to phosphates. But I think we need to work together on all these things to help the environment, and that's what we want. We want a clean river and a clean environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairperson.
No more speakers on this topic. Oh,
We have one more
Councillor
speaker.
Marsh,
Councillor Marsh.
number 21.
Is this working? Yes, brilliant.
I think so.
Yes, my question to the leader, there's two. One is possibly whether you might be able to tell us a few more words about how the Phosphate Commission might work, and also to welcome your joint meetings with Powers Cabinet, and to ask whether, given that a national forest is planned for Wales, whether there could be some sustained work with them to encourage planting of trees in the catchment to help slow the flow of water that arrives in our lovely county.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure there's phosphates or Paris County Council, but we'll take it as phosphate related.
So how will the Commission work? It's very important, I think, that it's seen as an add-on to the Nutrient Management Board. It's not a replacement. It's working together with the Nutrient Management Board to come up with a solution. Very much focused on getting the facts out there, getting it agreed. A small group, I think, of people. We don't want a huge thing. We're working at the moment to try to find appropriate people who might join that group. And then we'll work out, we do have some terms of reference already, but we need to attract hopefully some good talented people who can be seen as independent and come up with a solution which is then acceptable to all the many stakeholders who are so important. The situation in Wales and planting trees in Wales, and obviously we can't influence that. I think working together with Paris, we've only had 2 meetings now, but they do have a very similar approach to us, and we are close geographically to Paris and close in terms of the kind of people we are. both counties are ones which have a high level of people who are retired. And so people sort of retire to our counties and then they live a long time because we live in two most fantastic counties. So we need to work together and make it more and more attractive to people to live in our counties.
Thank you. Do we have any more on the phosphates?
Yes, Councillor Matthews, number 1.
Councillor Matthews.
Chairman. Okay.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Okay.
If there are no more questions on phosphates, we'll go on to item 3, Cabinet meeting with Powys County Council Cabinet. No, Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I warmly welcome the closer working with Powys County Council. It's something I've been asking for many years. I think it will be beneficial to this authority and to them to improve tourism and the local economy. I think there's a lot to be had by closer working together. Can the leader tell us, is he of the view that it's beneficial having these meetings, and can he tell us what benefits are coming out of them so far?
Thank you. Leader.
I think the first 2 meetings have been getting to know each other sessions. So the Chief Executive is very good at finishing these meetings with a list of things which we want to take forward. And he is also in communication with the Chief Executive of Powys, so we're working on a number of different levels. There's the election in May in Wales. They have a slightly different system from us. They have 5 years that someone gets elected for. So I don't think an awful lot is going to happen between now and when after that election takes place. But yes, we will, I guess, May, June time, we'll have another meeting. And from that, we need to get some concrete projects running. One is the border deal, which the government had in their last manifesto. I was looking at some papers actually about the Western Gateway yesterday, and there was reference in there to the border deal with transport and economy and that kind of stuff. So we'll be pushing that as part of the agenda, I'm sure. But it'll be the next meeting when, if we keep on meeting and we just talk and have a nice time, a nice cup of tea, then that's not what it's about. We need to be using our time effectively. And I'd say the Chief Executive is very good at holding me to the fire and saying, well, what are we agreeing to do? And he then writes down some objectives at meetings. So
do you think they're generally beneficial here?
Well, absolutely. Yes, I do.
Thank you. Let's leave it there.
Sorry, I gave far too a longer reply, obviously.
Yeah, well, yeah. Can we have any more questions on the Cabinet?
Next speaker is Councillor Phillips, number 18.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes, very interested to hear about the partnership with Powys. Obviously, they are very different. They have not only their 5-year cycles, but of course their funding of local government in Wales is very, very different to ours, and we should never forget that, really. What I was saying to the leader is, it's interesting you're having these talks. My community is very much affected by the Welsh border issues. They have a quarry, literally a mile into across the border, which has a huge impact in the villages of northwest Herefordshire. And there are other issues regarding the A44. It would be nice if you would also consult some of the local members in some of the work that you are doing. Because
is that a question, Councillor Phillips?
My question.
Can we have your question, please?
My question is, will you include the local members who represent the local communities and recognise the impact that some of the work that Wales is doing has on the local communities in Herefordshire?
Leader.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Phillips. I can always rely upon you to finish off with a question. So, yes, absolutely. We will be consulting quite how we'll do that. I don't know. I've had a communication about is it Stanhope around there, the parish with the cemetery, which is on one side. Stapleton, yes. They've contacted me about that.
Oh, robbing us, but there's the cemetery, yeah.
So I've got that one issue of robbing us in the cemeteries, but yes, we'll pick up other issues that might be relevant. Thank you.
Do we have another questioner?
Yes, number 13, Councillor Ginman.
Yes, thank
Councillor
you,
Ginman, what is your question?
My question is quite a simple one. I welcome the fact that you're talking to Powys. Are you talking to Monmouthshire? Because we share the border there and similar questions might arise. but there are marked differences in the behaviours and actions of Powys and Monmouthshire, and they have quite significant effect upon those parts of my ward.
Thank you.
Yes,
Leader.
I've been in touch with the leader of Monmouthshire, and it's interesting, they have similar issues, the moratorium, and I think they have a hospital there and a medical centre which they want to build, which might be restricted by the moratorium that they have and lack of and the phosphate levels in the rivers there. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questioners?
No further speakers?
Thank you. Then item 4, Citizens' Climate Assembly. Do we have speakers or questioners on this matter? Councillor Roan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In Appendix A, Decisions 1 and 21, Leader, the 14,000 odd postal invitations are whittled down to just, I believe, 48 attendees, representing a broad spectrum of the residents of the county. I understand and am led to believe that some 20% plus of those selected attendees dropped out of the Assembly between the first and the last Assembly meeting. The question is, on reflection, would it have not been more prudent to have engaged with parish councillors, the largest volunteer body in the county, instead of those hand-picked residents? After all, parish councillors work hard for where they live and they love, and they do it for free, and not for £300 per attendee a time. What value of the parish councillors' time versus the members of the Citizens' Assembly time?
Thank you. Leader.
Yeah, just a point of information, the number selected were 48 and 7 weren't able to attend, which on my maths I don't think that's 20%. We started off with 14,000 and then I think that was whittled down to 500 or 600 people who actually wrote and volunteered and said we're interested. They were then asked to I think at that time they were asked to suggest whether they were advocates of climate change or the other end of the spectrum. We needed to make sure we had a cross-section of those kinds of people. Why didn't we go out to the parishes? I think we use this system that a sortition has to reach out to the largest possible number of people. So 15,000 households were communicated with, and that would be a larger number than the individual parish councillors that we have. So I don't know whether Councillor Chowns would like to add anything further to that.
Councillor Chowns.
Thanks. Yes, thanks, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Rowan, for your question. I'd just like to point out it's not an either-or. We do consult with parish councillors very frequently. We run frequent parish summits where we've discussed these issues too. We also engage very explicitly with parish councils as part of the budget consultation process, and indeed the Citizens' Climate Assembly was conducted as part of the formal budget consultation process. So both parish councillors and assembly members were consulted in different ways. What we did specifically with the Citizens' Assembly was to reach out to audiences that haven't normally participated in consultation before, and for example we have members of the Citizens' Climate Assembly who'd not used a computer before. So part of the funding that was spent was to support them to be able to participate and to make their voices heard. I think that's a really important thing, to be able to ensure that we're hearing from the full spectrum of voices in Herefordshire. And I'd also remind all councillors in this room that they all unanimously voted in favour of setting up a Citizens' Climate Assembly in July 2019. Our administration delivered that.
Thank you. Do we have any more on the Citizens' Climate Assembly?
Yes, Councillor Kenyon, number 3.
Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure all the rest of you councillors have had emails from Peter Martin, who's accused the Citizens' Assembly of being biased, and they're being railroaded into decisions, and they're spoon-fed. Those are quite serious accusations, and this is one of the...
What is the question?
This is one of the 40... I'm getting to it. I'm just setting the scene. So what I'm asking is, what reassurances can you give me as leader that this will not happen again? That's the question, you know. What reassurances? Because it's obviously it's happening because one of the 48 members.
Yeah, yes. Mr. Martin, yes, he has sent representations around. I've had email correspondence with him, and you know, people are entitled to different views. And that actually, for my mind, the fact that he has been able to speak out, that he quite clearly represented one end of the spectrum, reflects the fact that the selection process was absolutely right. Not everybody agreed, and that's absolutely fine. That's democracy at work. So no, I'm afraid I'm not saying we will not run this kind of thing again, and I would encourage more people like Mr. Martin to participate. I actually was in correspondence with Mr. Martin. I think at the time that he was considering joining it, and he wasn't inclined to do so, but I encouraged him to carry on and stay involved in it, which is what he did. And I'm pleased that he did, because we need to have a cross-section. And you look at cross-section in society and in Herefordshire, I'm sure there are still people who do not believe in the climate emergency and what's happening.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kenyon. We have the question, I think, and the answer. We must move on. Do we have any more?
Yes, we do, Chairman. Councillor Johnson, number 16.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. My question to the leader is, since we operate a representative democracy in this country, we operate it through people of a like mind getting together, perhaps giving themselves party names, political names, whatever, and seek election based on a manifesto which they produce. And by that process, we finish up with whatever form of government we have at national or local level. That being the case, why will the leader consider using parish councillors who are themselves elected, and they are already a part of the representative democratic process? They have been elected on a programme, otherwise they wouldn't be there. They also have some experience of how local government works. They're able to distinguish rather more easily between what they would like and what is actually feasible or possible. Excuse me. I'm afraid I can't agree with the leader's assumption that the bigger the number of people you ask, the more likely you are to get a representative view. When Councillor Chan says that some of the folk were not able to use computers or anything before anyway. So I repeat the question, will the leader please give serious consideration to looking at the, I'm guessing here, it's here about 1,000, maybe 1,200 elected parish councillors. Now, there is a certain number beyond which, no matter how much you multiply it, you don't get a more representative view. And I would suggest that 1,000 is more than enough to get a representative view. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Leader.
I think, Councillor Johnson, a couple of points have already been made. First of all, this council voted unanimously for this assembly. Perhaps not everybody knew what the detail was likely to be, but that was the view.
Can we please just let the leader answer the question?
Secondly, we do have consultations with parishes. We do have Parish Summits, which Councillor Lester, I think, set up. Those, I have to say, are disappointing in the turnout. So if we have 300 odd parishes that around the council, and we probably get 50 or 60 individuals coming to those meetings. So even those are not particularly representative. We do need to continue to consult, and we'll be looking at every mechanism to increase that so that we hear the voice of everybody in the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Do we have any more on this topic?
No, Chairman, we don't.
Right. Item 5, Budget and Delivery Plan. Do we have any questioners on this? No questions?
Chairman, can I just say one thing about the wetlands? I was hoping that somebody might ask me a question that I could mention this, but the first wetland groundworks are due to commence on the 14th of March. We are on target to bring phosphate credits for proposal to Cabinet in April, and hopefully the scheme will be operational during the first half of this year. So there is good news on that. A third site has been identified, and so later on in the year, hopefully we will have made significant steps, at least to mitigate or militate against the effects of the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Kenyon, you're only allowed one bite of this particular cherry, I'm afraid. You've had your bite.
Question?
No, you've had your bite of the cherry. It's stated very specifically you have one question only on this item. I'm sorry. No. Quite simple.
Chairman, Councillor James, number 4.
Councillor James.
Yes, Chair. Can you tell me when the decision was made that only one question could be asked by an individual member? Can you give me the date and when that decision was made, please?
I think it's in the Constitution. I believe it's in the Constitution, but I rely upon the monitoring officer to back that up.
Bear with me, I'll just find
Yes,
it.
fine. 3 hours later.
Constitution says that the Constitution is an ass.
Right. Well, we'll come back to that. Item 5, Budget and Delivery Plan. Do we have any questions on the Budget and Delivery Plan? No. Do you want to have a short pause while you find this?
I'll just carry on.
Right, thank you. We now come to item 11. Members, I propose that we take the urgent motion as the first to be debated. Members, do you agree with that? Thank you very much. Before we commence the debate on the motions, I ask members to be succinct with their comments and to avoid repeating those points already made, so that those members who wish to speak have every opportunity to do so. The report containing the motions to be considered at this meeting is at page 349 of the agenda pack. And Council has, at the moment, 3 motions to consider, following my acceptance of an urgent matter motion concerning Ukraine. And in consultation with the monitoring officer, I will take this motion first. For each motion, I will identify a proposer and a seconder to move the motion. A debate will be undertaken by members on the motion and any amendments received. I will then call a vote on any amendments and on the final recommendation. Councillor Shaw, please can you confirm the seconder for your motion? Councillor Milmore, please introduce your motion, for which you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My wife and I have visited Ukraine, and my wife has been working under contract for several years to the Ukrainian Ministry of Justice, training their probation service. Fortunately, lately, remotely because of COVID. She has remained in daily contact with her colleagues, now under attack. We've all seen and read about the horror that is being inflicted upon the people of Ukraine. It's not hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of mainly women and children that have already fled Putin's onslaught of cruise missiles and shelling, of rockets and thermobaric weapons. The Disasters Emergency Committee now predict around 4 million refugees. Many civilians have bravely stayed to fight. When the government asked us to look after Syrian refugees and asylum seekers, Herefordshire volunteered to do so. When they asked us to look after unaccompanied children, Herefordshire answered the call. The Council is also actively involved in rehoming Afghan refugees, and I thank Councillor Durkin for briefing me on that. I think this Council, its officers and the people of Herefordshire have done a great job in answering those requests. I want this Council and our residents to be ready and waiting when the opportunity comes to welcome Ukrainian refugees into our county. We have welcomed their countrymen and women to work in our agricultural sector for many years as seasonal labour, But these soon to arrive will not have expected to have leave their homes, their jobs, their friends, their relations and their schoolmates. None of them signed up to trek across Europe with only what they could carry as convoys of tanks and Russian soldiers chased them out of their neighbourhoods. I have seen and heard just how enthusiastic and resolute our residents have been in collecting aid to be sent to Ukraine and to meet the desperate and immediate needs of refugees now fleeing the war zone. I'm sure that they will be just as enthusiastic and resolute in welcoming those who have been displaced by this European conflagration. I'm sure that no one in this room ever anticipated, in their lifetime, seeing such sights as those occurring now, only 1,500 miles away. That's 28 hours by car, although a tank, fortunately, takes a tad longer. I recall the fateful words of Winston Churchill from his broadcast talk of the 1st of October 1939. I cannot forecast to you the action of Russia. It is a riddle wrapped inside a mystery, inside an enigma. We must remain optimistic that this crisis will be resolved, that a diplomatic solution will be delivered. To jaw is better than to war. And in the meantime, we should also prepare. I understand that at least one ward councillor has already been approached with the offer of accommodation for a refugee family. I'm sure that many more will do so. But we need to be able to coordinate this wealth of human kindness to ensure it can be best delivered. We need to identify our Ukrainian English speakers and identify which schools can help with places. We need to roll up our sleeves. We need to roll up our sleeves and to get this done in advance of any refugees arriving. I hope my request to support this motion finds a sympathetic ear amongst you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Shaw. I think you've hit a nerve there. The motion now needs to be seconded, and I believe that Councillor Milmore will second the motion. Councillor Milmore, do you wish to speak now or after the debate, for which you have 3 minutes, by the way? You speak now. All yours.
Thank you, Chair. Since 2019, I've worked with the Ukrainian government helping develop IT infrastructures to train diplomats. I found my Ukrainian colleagues to be a bright, hard-working people with a love of democracy and keen to be part of the world's free democratic family. Part of my work over the past 10 years is defending against cyber attacks from Russia and China. On one.gov.uk website, I log around 1,000 failed brute force attacks each day from these two countries. My Ukrainian colleagues have been all too aware of the reality of the world we live in, and because we in the West have spent the last few decades navel-gazing, they are the ones now defending democracy from evil forces that have nothing but contempt for us and our way of life. Therefore, if you value free speech and democracy, I urge you all to unanimously vote for this motion and show Herefordshire support for the Ukrainian people. I think it was Admiral Yamamoto who said after the unprovoked attack on Pearl Harbor, "I fear we have all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." Hopefully, this episode will have woken us up from our slumber and filled us with the resolve to defend our values, just as our forefathers did for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We now move to the debate. Members are entitled to speak once during the debate for 3 minutes. The Vice Chairperson will be keeping a list of members who wish to speak during the debate. Please can members indicate to the Vice Chairperson if they intend to speak. And please don't keep repeating each other, because I think once is enough, and we do have time to consider as well. So, who wishes to speak?
First speaker is Councillor Kenyon, number 3.
Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this motion, and I think the worst is yet to come. I'd just like to repeat a bit of history here. Back before the First World War, just as the First World War was beginning, Herefordshire is a fine tradition. They were the first county to offer Belgian refugees homes. And I just read here, from September 2014 to January 1914 to 1915, approximately 400 refugees made Hereford and the surrounding towns of Leominster, Ross and Ledbury their homes. Many included wounded soldiers, told of the atrocities committed by the Germans. Let's not let history repeat itself. Let's support this motion and let's get as many people. I've got spare rooms. I'll have people come stay with me. You know, it's that serious. So I fully support this.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next,
Do we have other speakers?
yes, next speaker, Councillor Swinglehurst, number 12.
Councillor Swinglehurst.
Thank you. My heart is aching with the news that's coming from Ukraine. I'm moved by the determination and courage of the people who are staying to fight against such overwhelming odds, and by the desperation of those who are having to leave their loved ones, their home, their country. Putin is playing a dangerous game, and the people of Ukraine are paying a terrible price. I'm grateful to my colleague, Councillor Shaw, for tabling this emergency motion, as I know many of us will feel very deeply that we want to do something. It may only be to light a candle in the darkness, to pray, to reflect on our own blessings, but it may be something more tangible as well. There are organisations who are out there helping. Disasters Emergency Committee is a partnership of such organisations. And locally we have groups like Hereford Help for Ukraine and the Association of Ukrainian Women that the leader referenced earlier. And they're collecting items to send to Ukraine. They need donations, storage, transportation, help. There are over 1 million displaced persons as a result of Putin's dangerous game. Of the most relevance to us today is the scheme announced by the Prime Minister this week for an uncapped, sponsored humanitarian visa route to help Ukrainians with no ties to the UK. This will allow sponsors, such as local authorities and communities, to help Ukrainians who have been forced to flee their homes. Herefordshire Council has always stepped up to do its part, and I'm confident that we will do so now. I will certainly step up and do my part, and I will apply to be part of this scheme as a private sponsor. I consider it no less than my duty, and I welcome the opportunity to show compassion, to do right, to hold out the hand of friendship to a stranger, to light a candle in the darkness.
Thank you, Councillor. And next?
Next speaker is Councillor Tillett, number 7.
Councillor Tillett.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Kenyon has already made reference to the extraordinary effort that the citizens of the city and the wider county made at the start of the First World War, which was, of course, triggered by the German invasion of Belgium, and that Hereford was the first place to accept Belgian refugees. Members may not know, but in the council chamber in Hereford Town Hall hangs an unusual flag. On one side is the Union flag, and on the other side is the Belgian flag. And that was presented to the city during the First World War as a measure of the appreciation of the people of Belgium. And in a rather touching ceremony just a few years ago, the Belgian embassy sent representatives who presented the City Council with a replacement flag, which equally hangs proudly in the council chamber. Many of us, if we dig back in our history, will find that we have ancestors who are refugees. Myself, I am partly descended from Huguenots who escaped quite vicious religious persecution by Catholics in France and sought refuge in Northern Europe. And indeed, they brought with them the very word that we now use. The réfugié in French became refugee in English and was used for the first time. And there have been waves of such refugees that have arrived in this country over many decades and indeed over the centuries, and have added greatly to the cultural heritage and benefit of our society. In 1914, this county was not found wanting. We may have our own opinions on how tardy or reluctant some of the government response has been of late, but it would appear improving. The simple fact is this county must not and will not be found wanting. Offers have already been made of accommodation in homes and in temporary accommodation and in holiday lets, and we must be ready to respond to it. Our response must not be to be found wanting, and I urge support for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And next one?
Next speaker is Councillor Watson, number 8.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I would also like to say thank you to Councillor Shaw's and Millimore for tabling this motion. I would also like to include the memories of our foremothers as well, who also contributed to previous and current wars. I'd also like to thank those who are already active in our communities, and as there is no argument, there is no debate, and therefore I ask that we go to the vote.
Yes. Do you have a seconder for your motion? You do? Thank you. And I will then, I think...
You've had 1, 2, you've had 4 speakers so far. You've got 2.
2 more speakers. I'll have 2 more speakers then.
I withdraw mine.
Thank you, Councillor. That's fine. Just Councillor Jansen.
Yes, thank you very much. Today, the 4th of March, is designated the World Day of Prayer. Now, this used to be Women's World Day of Prayer, and now it's World Day of Prayer, and it happens every year. It started in 1887, and the organisers have obviously, they have changed part of it to include Ukraine, and I just want to read the prayer that they've included, and they say, our thoughts and prayers are with our sisters and brothers in the Ukraine and the surrounding countries in their fear and distress. We pray that reconciliation will overcome hatred, peace will conquer war, hope will replace despair, and that your plans for the world and for its people will be fulfilled. That prayer is being prayed worldwide today, and it will be answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shaw, you now have the right of reply to the debate. Councillor Matthews? Sorry, do you mind if I just let Councillor Matthews have a brief word? Councillor Matthews?
Yeah, I'll be very brief, Chairman. Sorry you missed me initially. I would just like to thank Councillor Shaw for the very sensitive and caring manner in which he presented this motion, and it has our full support.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw, now you may go.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I've anything more to add, and in case I crack up yet again, I'd like you just to go to the vote.
Thank you. I think I just read out the motion, if I may. This motion calls on the Executive to consider and put in place whatever facilities as may be reasonably expected to receive Ukrainian refugees, subject to direction from national government and an evaluation of council resources required, to ensure that schooling and health services are alerted and to inform the government in Westminster immediately that Herefordshire will not be found wanting in our welcome, and to extend a wider request to our residents to be willing to welcome any refugees that they can into their homes and to be ready to facilitate such organisation and support as these actions may require. We now move to the vote. I will call the vote, and members are asked to clearly raise their hand to indicate if they are for, against, or abstain for the motion. All in favour? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? That is unanimous support for your motion. Thank you. Well done. Now we come to the second motion, award scheme for the built environment. And Councillor Milne is the proposer and seconded by Councillor Howells. Can you just confirm that, please, Councillor Milne?
That is indeed correct, Chair.
Thank you. Now, please introduce your motion, of which you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. This is the motion for all those who at some time have recoiled at the look of a place, or got cold, confused, or lost in it, or thought, good grief, this could have been so much better designed, built, or adapted. However, it would not be our way to denigrate disaster planning or point out poor taste or criticise a crappy conversion, at least not in this chamber. Rather, what this motion seeks to do is to positively encourage higher standards of work in the built environment. It proposes to do this by setting up a system of award and recognition to support county plan objectives for sustainable living, resource stewardship, environmental standards, protection of heritage, and skills investment. This should be across the whole of the Shire of Hereford, to be run perhaps biennially. It is not a new idea. Many years ago, such a scheme was run by the Old Civic Trust, albeit just for Hereford. Some of its blue plaques may still be seen. Worcestershire has such a scheme, run by the County Society of Chartered Architects. Shropshire County Council has one for building excellence. And there are national schemes too, run by the likes of the Royal Institute of British Architects, the Masters House in Ledbury being a winner of this in 2016. The Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings has its Philip Webb Award for the sympathetic repair and reuse of old buildings, and its John Betjeman Award for places of worship. This year, the SPAB have gone further and added categories for sustainable heritage and best craftsman. So these are award schemes which recognise both the achievement itself and the team of architects and craftspeople involved. Herefordshire has plenty of talent to offer. Communion and archetype are among award-winning practices based in the county. The latter, who of course won commendation in 2017 for our wonderful Passive House Standard Archives and Records Centre. The motion simply asks the Executive to investigate such a scheme for Herefordshire and come forward with a detailed proposal which would, I suggest, be in the 3 categories of design, conservation and sustainability. The idea would be that for design, winning projects, be they new build, extensions or adaptations, would demonstrate exceptional qualities of beauty, durability and utility essential to good placemaking, whether in a modern or a traditional idiom. For conservation, we would see sensitivity, craftsmanship, skill in handling appropriate materials, and commitment to the care, repair, adaptation, and protection of old buildings or monuments and their settings. For sustainability, schemes which demonstrate flair in the retrofit or repurposing of a building, meeting high standards in energy efficiency, renewability, connectivity, and resource economy would be recognised. It is suggested that for all categories, placemaking and a whole building approach to tackling carbon reduction and climate resilience would be golden threads, as would a common view that for projects which had benefited from grant funding would deliver a measure of public benefit. Finally, some practical considerations members may wish to bear in mind in debate. Who might serve on judging panels? The SBAB, for example, have 5 experts for each category. How to ensure a level playing field for entrants, irrespective of their budget. The commitment to administration would be modest, I'm assured, but what additional costs might there be, e.g. if you decided on prizes or plaques? You may have other questions. Chairman, therefore, and members, therefore, I look forward to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, Councillor Milne, no, Councillor Howells, I believe. Are you going to second this motion? Sorry, I was thinking about the law. Sorry, forget that. So can you, do you wish to speak now or do you wish to speak later?
Yes.
Sorry?
I wish to speak now.
Speak now. Please speak.
Thank you. In seconding this motion, I feel there's little to add it to Councillor Milne's, as usual, eloquently expressed reasoning for putting it forward. He and I have passionately shared concerns at developers maximising outdated NPPF, that's National Planning Policy Framework acronym for those not familiar with it, conditions to deliver housing that does not meet up-to-date environmental and sustainability requirements, such as to mitigate the climate change crisis. We've shared concerns that our conservation areas are not properly appraised and managed to protect them adequately. As Councillor Harvey has said earlier, in Ledbury we have an unplanned and ugly blot on the landscape development built with no sensitivity whatsoever to the rural setting or reflecting, as it should have, the ambience and character of the existing built historic environment in Ledbury. As Jeremy says, this idea is not new and has proved to have a useful contribution to recognising and encouraging good design, conservation and sustainability. I don't expect or think members will find anything controversial about this motion. Indeed, I'm sure it captures sentiments we can all share. I look forward to seeing it adopted by Council and urge members to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We now move to the debate. Members are entitled to speak once during the debate for 3 minutes. The Vice Chairperson will be keeping a list of members who wish to speak during the debate. Please can members indicate to the Vice Chairperson if they intend to speak. And remember, you have 3 minutes. Vice Chairperson, who can you see?
Councillor Hewitt, number 9.
Councillor Hewitt, off you go.
Yeah, well, probably no surprise that I welcome this. I think we can all think of in our ward something that we've driven past and gone, wow, that's amazing. Well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. There's actually a nice little design on the main road out of Hereford, just beyond the Stretton-Suggers turn, where a tiny bungalow, which if you'd erased it, would have been a great big carbon footprint, has actually got an extension above, which has been really sympathetically done. And every time I go past it, I think, well, whoever designed that needs an award for actually thinking creatively and thinking naturally. So I think it's a great thing. But I also think that sort of impediment which seems to exist about, oh, we can't suggest this or we can't drive that, it would actually be a very, very good driver for our planning department to go, you know, well, we have examples throughout the county and this is the standard we're aspiring to. So it will be a really good adjunct to the SPD which is being developed on design and sustainability. So I warmly welcome it and thank you very much for putting it together, Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker is Councillor Phillips, number 18.
Off you go. Thank you, Councillor Phillips.
Yes, I think everybody is supportive of this, and I'm very pleased that Councillor Milne has mentioned two of the buildings that I was associated with. That was the new Archive Centre and the Master's House in Ledbury. Both of them were quite problematic to get through. They cost a lot of money, but at the same time, I think they will be value for money in the years ahead. And it shows some of the challenges that the public sector has got when it tries to deliver and make a statement. But we should rise to that challenge whenever we can, because obviously we are important in setting some standards in our community.
Thank you, Councillor. And next?
Next speaker, Councillor Norman. Could you please raise your number?
Councillor Norman.
Number 21.
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree with the points that have been made. I think we do, from time to time, see something of real quality and value and appreciate it when we see it, mainly because we so often see developments that are horrible, poor quality, mediocre, no real design, no real thought, no real consideration of people who are going to live in those and who are living in the area and going to have to look at them. I'm afraid that's far more often my feeling about the developments that I see around me. And I've sat on planning for many, many years and winced at the mediocrity of what so often comes our way. So anything that's going to encourage, support and celebrate better design, better quality, and maybe the more of it we get, the less we'll be told, oh, it's too expensive to do it. Maybe it'll become more standard. Then got to be agreed. So I'm very much in favour of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And the next?
Next speaker, Councillor Kenyon, number 3.
Councillor Kenyon.
Thank you, Chairman. It seems I have a lot to say today, doesn't it? I'm not allowed to speak. I'm not allowed to speak at home. That's what it is. But always be kind. Always be kind. I think the planning system needs a whole shake-up, really. It's easier to get planning permission on 500 houses than it is to get a planning permission on one house. So perhaps that needs looking at. I kind of welcome this because if there is a good way of building a house to follow, that's great. And if there's awards for it, that's great. But trying to get the large house builders to do any, they're not interested in awards, they're interested in profit. You know, I've got a lad that works on site, he goes on sites on building sites, and all they want is it thrown up as quick as they can. They don't pay the best money, they just want it thrown up. So I kind of do welcome this, but I also would like the planning system to be looked at where individuals can build houses, because I'm sure, and my Green Party friends across there will agree that if you're building a house for yourself or someone else is building a house for you, they're going to take great joy in doing it, and they'll be proud of what they do. And also, they use local builders. But builders, they use local building materials. So it's great for the economy. One small house built in the economy by a local builder, it brings more money into that economy than, you know, the big house builders, because they get everything centrally. So let's shake it all up. And so I said I kind of welcome this. I do actually welcome it. And let's put stars on these houses and let people build houses where they want to build them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker, Councillor Millmore, number 16.
Councillor Millmore.
Thank you. I've got a question. Just over the road from me, there is the remnants of a Elizabethan building. Councillor Mill will know what it is exactly. I can't remember. I just wondered, would this motion actually protect this building? Because I think it's about to collapse and disappear into the ether.
I'm sure that Councillor Mill can give you an answer when he winds up the debate.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers?
No further speakers, Chairman.
No further speakers?
Oh,
Councillor
hang on.
Mill.
Yes,
Well,
there
you
are.
do have one further
Yeah.
speaker. Councillor Shaw.
Sorry.
So it's Councillor Shaw,
Don't
number
be sorry.
11.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I quite welcome this proposal, this motion. I would like the consideration to be made, though, to ensure that the criteria or the kind of awards are differentiated from those which are currently sort of available either nationally or from other organisations, so that we're not going to be awarding our awards to buildings which have won other awards, and we perhaps can concentrate on some of the smaller developments or the smaller places which have been built or repaired. We've got an awful lot of Grade 2 buildings in this county. I live in one of them. I'm very fortunate to do so, but trying to deal with it is an ongoing issue, and I do see other Grade 2s that aren't so sympathetically. I like to think I look after mine sympathetically, but aren't so sympathetically looked after. So I'd like to see some work on this award, including listed buildings, if possible.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any more speakers?
Yes, we do, Chairman. Councillor Johnson, number 16.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I support. Well, I welcome and support the motion. I would only caution that it doesn't grow bureaucratically into another form of one more hurdle you've got to jump over in the general planning process. It is quite. It's very difficult to start with as it is. So great idea. Thank you to Councillor Milne. Let it not be just another stick with which the shepherd wants to build his own house is beaten. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think any more speakers wish to speak? Councillor Milne, it is your summing up time.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll start off by answering Councillor Milmore's question about the little building opposite him. It's a building constructed in 1867 by the Watkins family, the Brewering family, father of Alfred Watkins, as an aviary, now known as a summer house, in 1867, out of all that remained of the Tudor Shire Hall, which stood in the middle of Hightown, as a guild hall and Shire Hall. It was taken down a couple of years previously, and some of the principal posts, beautifully carved oak posts, were put back together again as this little building. And it's listed in its own right, and Councillor Milmore is quite correct in that it is on the at-risk register, and it badly needs some repair. And it would be just exactly the sort of project which, were we to encourage its owner to repair it appropriately, would qualify for this award scheme. So this award scheme would stand entirely outside of planning. So to allay Councillor Johnson's concerns, it certainly would be being used as a stick. I wasn't going to envisage that there'd be some sort of booby prize to thrash the dreadful examples of building that we all have in our minds around the town, but rather to have a conversation about improving standards across the board, just give that encouragement to those people. And I would particularly, I think, have in mind the members of our very large self-build and custom-build register. The great unmet need that's been referred to in this council, over 500 people who we are aware of who've registered for sites, if they ever get the opportunity. I mean, are not necessarily people who would do sort of Kevin MacLeod great grand designs projects, but people who, as Councillor Kenyon mentioned, who would be very prepared to put that bit of extra skill and effort, use local talent, local craftsmen, to raise standards on an individual level, to do developments that reflect what is best of Herefordshire. And I think that's what this award scheme is all about. It's not about beating people through the planning process at all. It's entirely about supporting local plan objectives for encouraging sustainability and high standards in building, high standards of conservation, and I commend it to the House.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. We move to the vote. I will call the vote, and members are asked to clearly raise their hand to indicate if they are for, against, or abstain for the motion. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. We come to motion number 3, Rural Impact Assessment and Rural Proofing. And Councillor Watson, who is the proposer, can you confirm the seconder for your motion? Yes, Councillor Watson? Councillor Phillips?
It's Councillor Phillips.
It is Councillor Phillips. Good. Now, Councillor Phillips, as you are the seconder of the motion, do you wish to speak now or after the debate?
I will speak now. Well, I'll speak after.
Which one? Sorry?
I speak first.
Yes, yeah, but I mean, you will speak immediately after.
I'll speak after the proposal, yes.
That's fine. Yes, that's what I thought you meant, but I wasn't quite sure. No, I wasn't trying to put you in the hot seat. Councillor Watson, you may propose. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Before I start my 5-minute speech, I wish to give a warning. My speech uses the word rural on many occasions. The dynamics of rural areas are different from those of urban areas. It is essential the needs and opportunities in rural areas be fully addressed. There is insufficient government funding for rural areas, and the fact that with more resources of all kinds, we could do more. Our county plan describes our rural nature, but we do not collect the evidence to demonstrate the spread of funding across the county in terms of urban versus rural. It is well known that it is more difficult for rural areas to attract external funding in the face of the more visible issues in urban areas. So carrying out a rural proofing through rural impact assessments can only help shine a light directly on the hidden poverty and issues around access, isolation, and job opportunities which many rural communities face. 72 out of the 116 Herefordshire's lower layer super output areas are amongst the 25% most deprived in areas in England. 75% of these 72 areas are actually in our rural areas. Rural proofing has been carried out successfully elsewhere. East Riding of Yorkshire Council is a unitary council and has a small team dedicated to rural issues which champions rural and provides a rural voice for rural communities, focusing on rural proofing, rural policy development, rural partnerships, development and facilitation, rural funding and rural delivery. In 1998, the Council facilitated a rural partnership and produced its first rural strategy. These initiatives have helped to raise the rural profile and attract external funding via the European Leader programs and single regeneration programs. It was fundamental in the Council winning Beacon's Council status for supporting the rural economy and for its selection as a national pathfinder for rural delivery, both which brought in resources. I would like to see the same for Herefordshire. This motion asks Herefordshire Council and central government to focus on its rural communities so they can thrive and not just survive. Our budgets and contracts need to demonstrate to the rural citizens of the county that this council clearly identifies the challenges for those living in rural areas, and they are considered in its decision-making processes, not anecdotally, but by collecting the evidence of facts and figures which we can then share with our MPs and central government. Please note that after consultation with senior officers, this motion was changed to consider the outlined, and not to be carried out. This change enables officers to determine what is feasible with the current constraints of time, budget and resources, and for the executive to produce a report for a future full council meeting. I thank you, Chair, and I look forward to listening to the debate.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, Councillor Phillips, I believe you will have your say now.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Like with the other two debates we've had, I think this is pretty straightforward, but it's important to think rural, both as a council and as a government. And we as a council sometimes think we are thinking rural, but we do need to evidence that much more strongly. Through my association with the Rural Services Network, I wanted to pick up, first of all, the important work that we need to do in order to influence government to understand the needs of rural communities. We live in an urban nation who have urban problems and urban solutions to that, and who fail to understand about rurality. But rurality is a minority group as much as anything else. We have £5.2 million through the Rural Services Delivery Grant, and as far as I'm concerned, that's 5.2 million reasons why we should be concentrating on this motion and building up that evidence. We are reaching a situation at the moment where the government is reviewing the way it funds local authorities. The Minister admits that much of that data is out of date. Some of it is based, of course, on the 2010 census, which is understandable because the new stuff is due to come in, but some of it is even longer. And we need to be sure that we have the evidence there to supply to show what that rural pressures are. Putin's war, because that's what it is, it's Putin's war, has forced up the price of fuel. That will have a disproportionate effect in rural areas where you have to provide rural services. And it's easy to say that, but where is the evidence that we've got to prove to government what that extra cost is? And we do need that. Government is changing those criteria. It's moving away from sparsity and going to time travel, which can be very narrow. And we need to be careful how we actually respond to that. So often, even in Herefordshire, the city and the market towns mask the real cost of delivering some of those rural services in the rural areas. From a county point of view, recently there have been 2 examples where I think we need to be more clever at thinking rural. The consultation that closed on Monday regarding the spatial strategy looked at the options, particularly for rural areas. But it didn't really point out that if you went for the one option, which included 1,500 houses in a new village somewhere, and took that number away from the rural settlements, you're actually looking at 1 to 2 new houses per rural ward per year to 2041. The consequences of that on the sustainability, socially and economically, as well as environmentally, on rural areas, really needed to be spelt out with a little more clarity. And similarly, the paper that was pulled on the Market Towns Initiative indicated an area of outstanding natural beauty for northwest Herefordshire. You can't have a paper like that coming to Cabinet which doesn't point out clearly what the impact is on the rural area that would involve. And there was no reference to the communities, the parish councils are there. So we've got to think a little bit more cleverly about this. And I think we're going to get better policies as a result, more meaningful, but also we will also get that message back to government with that firm evidence to be properly funded in our rural communities in the future.
Thank you, Councillor. And we now move to the debate. Members are entitled to speak once during the debate for 3 minutes. The Vice Chairperson will be keeping a list of members who wish to speak during the debate. Please can members indicate to the Vice Chairperson if they intend to speak. 3 minutes each.
First speaker is Councillor Matthews, number 1.
Councillor Matthews.
Chairman, I warmly thank Councillor Watson and Councillor Phillips for bringing this motion. It's well overdue, and they will both know that I've raised it regularly over the last 12 months, and perhaps I should have taken more positive action as they have. Councillor Harvey will also know with respect that during the budget debate I constantly raised the issues of rural poverty and the shortcomings within the support of the rural areas. I don't think there's anything more to be said apart from the fact that we warmly support this motion, and I sincerely hope that members will do so.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker, Councillor Stone, number 11.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's disappointing that the Levelling Up report pays so little attention to rural counties like Herefordshire and Shropshire. Councillor Phillips has always been a champion of rural counties, especially Herefordshire, and has helped obtain rural services grants, which have been a welcome addition to our annual budgets. £5 million, as he says, or more a year. If we lose these, or if they're in danger of being reduced, we will be in serious trouble. The low wages, older population and problems of rural isolation in our county, however lovely the scenery, all helps to emphasise the importance of this motion. All our rural services are under pressure, not least our road network, not the fault of this administration or any other local administration. The patchy rollout of high-speed broadband is another example since 2015. The flooding which affects many of our wards, and the need for us to support our local shops and pubs and schools and keep them all going. So I agree that the government needs to rethink and reform the rural proofing process, as the motion says. And I thank Councillors Watson and Phillips for their motion, which I strongly support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next,
and the next one?
Next speaker, Councillor Hewitt, number 9.
Councillor Hewitt.
Okay, yeah. Right. Sorry. Yeah, I absolutely warmly welcome this. I've been considering it for a while. I was a tiny bit hesitant because recently listened to the thing about 10% biodiversity net gain and how you're going to monitor it, and so if we have to have a rural impact assessment on every decision. But I've got a wish list, and this sort of wish list is the sort of thing that comes out of, we've got 5.2 million, where is it going? And you know, everybody said to me, oh, well, it gets absorbed. But here's the wish list. Safer routes to school for primary school children. Aren't we looking at elms and the public rights of way to see if we can negotiate with farmers routes on the inside of their fields so that our narrow roads don't have to accommodate children on bikes? Connectivity for rural businesses. It was disappointing that we were let down, but it's really essential, and I've got one of the wards that was really affected by the GigaClear contract not being rolled through, and I know that everybody's concerned about it, and I don't blame officers. It's just perhaps, I don't know whether we could have avoided that car crash, I don't know. Early help for families. One of the things that I was made aware of early on in an improvement journey was that a lot of looked after children arise in South Herefordshire. If we actually had an understanding that we needed to put that early help into the rural communities instead of making people travel on buses which are non-existent and too expensive. And the next thing is tourist loos. I know that sounds mad, but we want tourists to come to Herefordshire, and there are beautiful walks which we could advertise. And in other counties, because there has been rural proofing, and we're relying on a sort of a tourist economy which drinks in this fantastic landscape, there are almost no facilities for tourists if they're going to actually need to go somewhere halfway through a 5-mile walk or a 10-mile walk or whatever. So those are the sorts of reasons why I think we need somebody dedicated to a rural strategy to help the economy and to help the conditions for rural residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Next speaker, Councillor Toynbee, 28.
Councillor Toynbee.
Yes, thank you very much for this motion, which mentions the phrase levelling up, which we all hear a lot about. Personally, I was very disappointed when the Ministry for Local Government removed the phrase local government from its title and put instead the phrase levelling up, which is basically a political slogan. And I'm very worried that they've removed our ministry, local government, but they've removed local government from their title. I think it's very revealing. Personally, in my opinion, it demonstrates a lack of respect from central government to local government.
Yes.
I agree with Councillor Phillips that we need decent funding for our county, and I support this motion. But, you know, we can have all the assessments and monitoring and strategies and everything else we want until we're blue in the face. But until we have the resources that we need to support our rural communities, it's just words. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers as such? But before you do, I'm aware that this meeting has been in progress for nearly 3 hours, and please can members indicate by raising their hands that they are content that the meeting continues. Thank you. The meeting will continue.
There are no further speakers, Chairman.
No further speakers. Well, Councillor Watson, you have the right to sum up and right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for their contributions. I haven't heard any arguments, so I look forward to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, no further speakers. Monitoring Officer, please can you advise if any amendments have been received? None received. Thank you. The proposer has made her summing up, and we now move to the vote. I will call the vote, and members are asked to clearly raise their hand to indicate if they are for, against, or abstain on this motion. All in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Item 12. Full Council meeting dates 2022-23. The next meeting of Council is the annual meeting on the 20th of May at 10:30. It says PM, but in fact ignore that, it is AM. I hope you'll be relieved by that. I know some people are very keen on evening meetings, but that's ridiculous, isn't it? Council is asked to agree the meeting dates for 2022-23 as printed on the agenda. 29th of July, 21st of October, 9th of December, 10th of February 23, 3rd of March 23, and 19th of May 23. Are there any comments on the dates, please? Then we will move to the vote. Please can members vote for, against, or abstain? All those for? All those against? Any abstentions? Those dates are approved. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank members of the public and councillors for their attendance at today's meeting. The next scheduled meeting of the Council is the annual meeting at 10:30 a.m. on Friday, the 20th of May. And the time is 1:15 precisely. And the meeting is now closed. Can I check with the Democratic Services team that the live stream has been switched off and we are no longer broadcasting live?